And here we are live on a special five stack. There's our favorite Lev Parnas joining us today. Dean Blundell still traveling around the world. He has a life of luxury, that man. I swear, he has more vacations than all of us combined. And I'm so glad he gets to do that because he works so hard all the time. How are you?
Oh,
How you doing, Lev?
I'm doing good. Thank you for asking, Zev. Some of my subscribers were asking me to make sure that ICE didn't pick up Dean while he's not here. I was like, well, we gotta make sure. But we joke about it, but it's really serious. I mean, the things that are happening here with ICE. Just think about right now. We had a court a ruling. A judge said that 600 of the people arrested in Chicago have to be let out. I mean, it's incredible just to see how many lives are being destroyed by this dictatorship that we're running
It
through. I'm
really
sorry.
is. It really
Yeah.
is. And there seems to be no end to what he'll do, no end to the cruelty, no end to the, it's just unbelievable. There's this, what he has done to the Department of Justice, what he has done to, every single institution that we've called, we've been trusting in America, and it's completely wrecked it all. It's unbelievable. And one of those big stories today, which we'll get to at the start of the show here at number five, because we've got to truncate a time, is this reaction he had this morning to the Epstein emails that were revealed the other day. So at around 9:30 this morning, Donald Trump posted a desperate Truth Social message calling the explosive Epstein document releases another Russia scam. And then he claimed that Epstein was a Democrat and it's the Democrats' problem, not just a Republican problem, nothing new in that. But then he says just an hour later, he puts out another one. And so he's really on a rant first thing in the morning. He's got nothing better to do. At 10:35 a.m., he announces he's ordering Attorney General Pam Bondi and the FBI to investigate Epstein's ties to a select group of people: Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, J.P. Morgan Chase. And that's it. He doesn't mention any Republicans in there, nothing like that. Basic panic from the White House this morning. But the fact that he was spending the first hours of his weekday focused on something like this, Lev, they really are freaking out inside the White House.
Oh yeah, Zev. I wrote about it. And I broke actually at when we're done talking. I'm going to finish up. I'm going to be breaking some other news that's going on in the White House because the pressure that's being put on right now on Nancy Mace and also some of the senators
I'm
in
having a little
Plan
hard time.
B.
Can you get closer to those camera, to the microphone? Because can't hear you.
Is that better?
That's much
Is
better.
that
Yeah,
better?
yeah,
Much
much
better. I'm
better.
sorry. My earphone fell out. Yeah,
Ah,
my headphones. Okay, sorry about that
no problem.
technology. Yeah, but what I was saying is basically when we're done with the Substack, I'm going to be writing a Substack about some of the breaking stuff that's happening inside the White House that I could share with you right now. That they're not only are they in complete turmoil, they're also putting major pressure on Nancy Mace. They think she's the loose cannon that might be able they could draw back and take her vote back when it comes because yes they signed the petition but now it goes to the vote and now they need to make sure for the next week they hold the line while he's making pressure calling he's also right now doubling down and calling senators like Lindsey Graham and others and pressuring them to make sure it doesn't if it does pass the House it doesn't go past the Senate. He's also been heard by several of my sources saying that the files will never see the light of day. So he's very scared and very controlled. But he's going a step further. If you remember, Zeb, when we did our, I don't know if you recall when we did our special a few months ago or maybe a month and a half ago about the Epstein stuff, where we were talking about everything that's happening. The one thing I mentioned and I wrote about, I said that they have a plan, and the plan is that they're going to eventually go after Democrats and not yet, but you will see that they're going to throw also some Republican meat in there
Mhm.
because this was the contingency plan that they had all along. Pam Bondi, she's already announced that she's started an investigation into the Clintons and others, and they are also think this was all along part of the plan, part of the contingency plan to be able to now start opening up investigations to try to change the narrative away from him farther and farther because he understands now that it's going to come down to him. If he can't stop it in the Senate, he's going to have to be the veto power over it. And what I'm hearing is that he's not going to let them go see the light of day no matter what.
It doesn't look like he will, but he certainly doesn't want to be the person vetoing the stuff because at the end of the
Correct.
day, even next Friday, if he gets this, if he gets these documents on his desk to allowing these FBI files to be released, he is going to come up with some excuse not to release it, obviously, and he'll sign the veto. But it's going to look to me like it looks to everybody right now. It looks like, he's covering up for his own crimes. I mean, the only way you would know Bill Clinton and Larry Summers and Reid Hoffman and JP Morgan were so involved with Jeffrey Epstein is if you were also there and also involved with Jeffrey Epstein. It's the kind of stuff that you wouldn't be, you know, broadcasting wildly if you're the president of the United States unless you knew that they were involved. And if they were involved, guess what? You were involved because how else would you know? No one gets invited to a party and, and can name the party guests unless you're invited to the party. You've got to be invited to the party. He was in the party. He knew what was going on. He was part of the whole club. That's why all of these Epstein emails are filled with references to Trump more than anybody else. Donald Trump is the number one topic that Jeffrey Epstein wrote about.
Yeah, and just think about it, the most vile human being on our planet that we know, Epstein, that is disgusting enough that what he did, he's calling Trump the nastiest human being, the dirtiest human being. Can you imagine that?
Yeah.
Can you imagine to what degree Donald Trump and how close these guys were? The other thing is that, there should be more of an outcry and, for Maxwell to be remanded immediately and thrown into a maximum security prison instead of there, because there should be more of a push towards, Todd Blanche of what is happening and why is she there while she perjured herself just from these emails alone. Donald Trump himself also said he's never been to Epstein Island, but now we have proof that he spent plenty of hours inside of Epstein's home while there were minors there. Doesn't matter, they come out and try to make it believe like that Virginia Jeffrey said nothing bad about Donald Trump. But also let's remember that Virginia has admitted herself that she was drugged a lot during while she was that 15, 16, 17-year-old girl, that, heavy drugs, memory, a lot of things happen. But what would the simple fact is this, look, what would Donald Trump, a grown man, be doing with Epstein, another grown man, with Maxwell, a grown woman, with a 16-year-old girl that used to work in Mar-a-Lago, that now is somehow in Epstein's house, and they're all there together. And this is a email that's being written between two criminals to each other. So it's not like they're trying to frame somebody, because they would never. These are personal emails to each other, trying to figure out why Donald Trump is not being charged or looked at.
Yeah.
This is an email where they're trying to say like we're 75% there, meaning that they started to believe, and even Michael Wolff said that Epstein started to believe that Trump was the one that was, giving information about him and stuff. And the only time you do that, like me and you said, Zev, is to protect yourself. That means that, and then, don't forget the chain with Acosta right away becoming labor secretary right after this all happened. I mean, it's common sense.
Yeah. It's so true that this is kind of obvious what is happening here. But on the other hand, he only has to convince some people that it's not him, right? He needs to convince enough people that it's not him involved in all of this, and it really is the Democrats. So this is really a question about can they capture the hearts and minds of the middle of the country, sort of the independence of the country, in believing that it's not, that he wasn't involved. And that's, I think, the strategy around Mace and this Pam Bondi investigation into all these people. It's just to throw a little bit of shade, a little bit of doubt about whether it was Trump's involvement or not. And then, maybe Mace might flip. I mean, I listened to her yesterday. She sounded like she could flip, like she didn't know which way to go. On the one hand, she's got her loyalties to survivors of human trafficking, because she, I think, was abused herself in her previous, earlier on in her life, and she's also very loyal to this president. I mean, deeply loyal to this president. So she might cave. I don't know if Boebert and MGT will cave,
No,
but Boebert will.
Mace,
But
Mace,
Mace could.
and it's not only Mace. Also, what I'm hearing is this is very important. Also, and folks, smash those hearts, because this information you're not going to hear anywhere else. So make
Mm,
sure you smash them so you could, pass it on, and we get as many people to listen. The other thing is you have to understand is he's making calls to a lot of the congressmen and women that are, because there's a tsunami that's building right now, that
mm,
once it hits the floor, that it's not going to be just about Mace. That once it hits the vote, you're going to have over 100 Republicans that are going to vote to release the files. If that happens, that's a tremendous shift that will change place, because now all of these Republicans will have to face their constituents, the media, and everything, and push towards the opening, and that would put pressure on the senators and everything else. So Trump's not only making phone calls to try to stop the vote, which is the number one thing, and that's where Mace comes in. But what I'm hearing, that there's a onslaught of Republicans that are like, I had Don Bacon on my Substack, Don Bacon, who didn't sign up to for the 218 votes, but told me on my Substack that he's going to be voting if it hits the floor. He's going to be voting, and he feels that there's at least 100 other Republicans that are going to jump and flip ship. So Trump is not just trying to stop the vote. That's why there's a contingency plan B, and that's why people need to understand is he's trying to, yes, putting pressure on Mace, but there's also a bunch of other what's it called, Republicans that he's trying to flip. So because even if it does pass through, that it passes through thin lines, because the heavier the pressure, the harder it's going to be to have him be able to get the Senate to stop it. And like you said, Zev, 100% right. Trump is doing everything he can, because he does not want to look like the one that has to veto it and stop it, and because it stops with him. And that's another thing. The reason why, like you're right, the reason why they're bringing in names like Clinton, Larry Summers. Remember, he mentioned these names a month and a half ago, when
Mm.
before he was throwing out Summers' name. He was throwing out. He was already preparing, and that's why I wrote in my Substack about, because this was the contingency plan, because he feels that if the country all of a sudden feels like they could do what we did to Hunter Biden and the Biden. Just think about it. If they could turn this into all of a sudden a Clinton cover up, Epstein conspiracy, that is his only way to be able to give that base a hungry enough one. That's why we have to be very careful of how it's going on, and that's why we have to be very loud, very strong, and very united in our messages right now, because that's what's gearing up, as I could see happen,
I
is
think you're right.
they're gearing up the machine to give such a big news splash that something, well, the media covers, and if it's bad enough, and put the Democrats back on the defense, because right now it's them that are on the defense, and we're finally on the offense, which
Yeah, and
is how we should be.
it's great to be in this position, and it's very rare for Democrats to be in this position. But I want to just share with you what he's saying here. So Bill Clinton, Larry Summers, Reid Hoffman, JP Morgan, Chase, these are all, of course, people who were involved, or companies as well, that were involved with Epstein. Now, it's really important to remember what Epstein was doing. You know, the context here is very important. Epstein was working on behalf of the Israelis, and also sometimes for the Russians, but was basically working for the Israelis to compromise the peace process that was happening during the Bill Clinton years. And so they likely had some compromise on Bill Clinton. Who knows what it was, but they likely had some compromise on Bill Clinton. And that's one of the ways they were able to stop the peace process that was beginning to take shape under Clinton between the Palestinians and the Israelis. So the key here is that they were targeting Democrats as blackmailers, as espionage targets. They weren't just targeting the Democrats because they were his buddies and his friends. You know, if Larry Summers was there and Bill Clinton was there, that's bad. They shouldn't have been there. They were probably doing bad things. But on top of that, they were also being targeted for an espionage play, an operation, which is an influence operation to make them change their policies. At the same time, Donald Trump is in exactly the same boat. He's also been targeted as an influence operation. And you know, really the big question for me is, where are these photos? You know, the photos that Michael Wolff, and he spoke about this on my show the other day. In fact, I might just play you a quick clip here about what he said on the show the other day. Um, you know, it's really interesting that there are photos of Donald Trump scantily clad by the pool with scantily clad models by Epstein's pool out there in some places that we can imagine where they are, but they've not yet emerged into the public light. Now, the one person who did see them was Michael Wolff. Let's take a listen to what he said. Now, that's can be the case with many friendships. However, the very few friendships would have photographs of your friend tucked away in a safe, of your friend in a compromising position with, you know, stains on his suit. And you've seen these pictures, you more
Yes.
than
Yeah.
anybody
Well,
else.
yes, but I'm not sure that that's True. I mean, I think these kinds of pictures were, which any, uh, not not my friends, but I think many people might have these kinds of semi-jocular, semi-comic, you know, we're at a party. I don't know where,
I don't have them.
whatever the circumstance says. We're around the swimming pool.
Yeah.
These are not taken in that moment of thinking that you're doing anything wrong, because you are just living your
Your life.
life, a life we have come to see, understand was was problematic, to say the least, in so many ways. But at that moment, not just two guys, two playboys, two, this is what we do, this is who we are. Now, the fact that Epstein saved these pictures, you know, I think that's a more difficult thing to analyze. But even when he took them out, when he showed them to me, it was in a spirit of a spirit of kind of a mockery of Trump, of almost that these were kind of novelty pictures. These were meant to, these were meant to be laughed at.
Now, what's significant here is not that, the type of photos or whatever they are. These are compromising photos of President Trump. These are six, supposedly compromising photos of Trump. They are not available to anyone. We know from the new emails that were just published that he offered these same photographs. Epstein offered the same photographs to another reporter at the New York Times at the time, Landon Thomas Jr., and that never materialized. And in fact, Landon Thomas Jr. landed up being a friend of Epstein and was fired for that. But the fact that these images were offered out there, and that these existence of these images were are people are aware of these photographs, that is not what's worrying Trump directly. I think what he's worried about is what those mean. They mean that probably these were the kinds of photos that were used to compromise him by foreign intelligence services or by Putin or by others who are trying to get an understanding that he would do things for them, that he was blackmailed on these photos.
Well, I think there was a major campaign, and I'm looking into it, and that's one of the things I'm working in for the past several months already on a story about how the KGB and how Putin and how they've literally been following Donald Trump, and people using people like Epstein and others in Trump's world to be able to manipulate and make him an asset. Like I said, there's different time. He wasn't one that reports and gets paid by the K. He was one that was, all he had to do was live his life and do it. But they, you know, put him in the right position because of knowing the greed factors, the levels of corruption that he was willing to go, and having all this compromise, not compromise like P tapes, which the Democrats
Mm,
were talking about, but real compromise like financial crimes, like relationships with Epstein and others in the United States, not somewhere over in Russia, and some tape that they were chasing. So I truly believe absolutely, and that's part of some of the investigative work I'm doing right now to with some of my sources to be able to try get some actual to validate some of that stuff. But I think you're right. That's a lot of what he's scared of. But let's also understand one thing. Listening to Michael Wolff try to downplay and explain,
mm,
like even hearing you say, I was never at a party like that. Like
mm,
for to hear him say, normalize that it's okay. Oh, two playboys said. No, this was not two playboys. This was underage girls. These were
mm,
young teenage girls. I mean, barely age enough. And some of them were drugged. Some of them were, manipulated because of the money and power. I mean, just think about these girls were sitting in $20 million estates
mm,
with some of the richest, most powerful men, with pictures of other presidents and leaders all over the world with private jets and all of this. So it just shows you how deep Trump was in that world. And, it wasn't that like, oh, he may have been here. But again, if you take a listen to the way Katie Johnson explains it, if you listen to it, and I played her whole interview on my Substack, if you listen to how also others talk about, if you listen to Epstein in his own words, if you listen to Trump in his own words, how prior to how he used to speak about. If you take a look at, like I say, don't even sometimes listen to what they say, watch what they do.
Mm.
The fact that Maxwell right now is sitting in some swanky federal prison with a puppy and Uber foods and waiting to be commuted is tells you everything that needs to be known, because she's the only one besides those. Because think about it, folks, besides those FBI DOJ tapes right now, files that Trump is basically not allowing us to see, the only other person that really knows the truth besides Trump, Trump's involvement, is sitting Maxwell in that prison. So
Absolutely.
that's why I said. So his actions are showing you exactly what's going on. Yeah, Zev. I mean, we just need to keep pushing.
I just think that these images and these compromising photos are, as you say, just a part of it. There is a lot of financially compromising stuff around Trump and Russia, in particular. We know some of it, but we don't know all of it. And there's probably a lot more coming out now. In 2016, the former Palm Beach sheriff John Mark Dugan took the copies of these photos and the DVDs that they seized from Epstein's home and made copies of them. And then he disappeared to Russia. That's where he went to live. And subsequently, he's apparently suffered some sort of poisoning. And, it's hard to track down exactly where he is right now. But it seems that he took those archives of the encrypted backups, hundreds of DVDs from Epstein's home, to Russia with him, which means the Russians have this. They've had compromising video, and they have probably been using it. I mean, why wouldn't they be using it against the president?
Not only that, but in one of the emails, you see him talking about how close his relationship was with Viktor Churkin, the
Yes.
ex-ambassador to the United Nations from Russia, and ambassador to also, I think, Belgium, other Russian. But he talks about how close his relationship was, and then he says also to pass on a message to Lavrov that he could give them the goods, basically, on how to deal with Donald Trump. So just you gotta understand how important these messages are. This is not like, somebody that works in McDonald's, or somebody that is sitting there where you could say, oh, this guy's crazy. He doesn't know these people. He can't
Mm.
have this. No, this is exactly what me and Zev have been talking about, what Zev has been talking for the past 6 years, since 2019, since he started investigating Epstein, that he was more than just a pedophile. He was more than that. That was his vice. Being a pedophile was his vice and was his nasty thing. And this is something, but being an asset for other countries, and being a person that was using, let's say, underhanded tactics to
Mm.
be able to manipulate, have information, and do. That was the world he lived in. And this is where, what's it called? So the fact that he could call, tell the Russians right before Helsinki. This is in 2018, folks.
Mm.
Remember, this is just recent. Well, he's already the president of the United States. Epstein turns around and says, "Listen, I'll tell you how to deal with this guy." And what happens? Literally, within
It's so
6, 7
important.
months after that, he gets arrested by Bill Barr, and we don't see Epstein ever again.
It's so important what you're saying, because really this was a compromising espionage operation designed to compromise the exact people that it landed up compromising, people like Trump and Clinton and others. So what you've got here is Epstein running this fully formed operation in order to entrap Americans with these underage girls doing all sorts of things, and then feeding that information back to both the Israelis and the Russians. And then using that, and now we know from these emails that there was some real coordination at the highest level between Epstein and Putin directly. Like at one point in one of these emails, he actually says, Putin called me to meet him. And Putin asked that I meet him in St. Petersburg, I think were the exact words. And then he responds, I told him no. If he wants to meet me, he'll need to set aside real time and privacy. Now, who is Jeffrey Epstein to be speaking to Vladimir Putin like that? And he's reporting this to Ehud Barak, the former prime minister of Israel. Boy, I mean, it's pretty clear that there is a intelligence operation at the very highest levels of these governments designed to compromise the leadership in the United States.
Oh, 100%. And again, this is very important. As like you said, who is he speaking to? It's one thing if he was speaking to some friend, you could say, oh, maybe he's just trying to, make himself, brag or something. But he's speaking to Ehud Barak, who was the prime minister of Israel at the time, or the
He'd been
former prime
finished. He
minister.
was
Sorry,
finished, but he was the
right, the
previous.
former, but the
Yeah,
previous,
yeah.
excuse me, prime minister of Israel, which is, powerful enough. These are actual people that are in that circle, and they're talking about because again at that time you were saying that there was peace talks, certain things that were happening where they needed his intelligence and him to go out there and be to dig up, and like Trump sent me to dig up dirt on the Bidens. Basically Epstein was being used to dig up dirt on certain Democrats and certain opposition people to be able to sway political favor, as you could say it.
One thing that's come up in this relationship between Epstein and Barak is a name of Victor Vekselberg. Now, you'll know that name pretty well. Victor Vekselberg was really involved in getting Donald Trump elected in 2016, 2015. And even if the record serves correct, paid Michael Cohen $500,000 for that endeavor. Um, this is someone who was intimately involved in
Oh,
getting Trump.
really? I didn't know that. I didn't know he paid Michael
Oh
five
yeah,
hundred
I think
thousand.
that's what the
Oh,
record says. It's a nice
oh,
little joke.
remind me next time we're on
Next time talk to
Unleashed. I will ask Michael about that. I promise you
I'd
that.
be happy to ask you about it too if you
Yeah,
if you wanted
yeah,
to.
yeah. No,
Yeah,
absolutely.
but there's Victor Vekselberg is not some innocent guy here. He connects
No.
Putin because he's a Russian oligarch who's also lives in Israel, also connected to the Israeli leadership there. I mean, you've got someone who's really connected in here, and he is in partnership. And we find out through all these emails with Ehud Barak. And also Jeffrey Epstein through this carbon company, which I'd reported about years ago. But the thing is, and I'm really trying to show everyone is
And
that
don't
this is
forget Manafort. Don't forget Manafort.
Manafort, of course, who was involved, very much
10 million.
involved with
I mean, remember? Yeah,
with
exactly.
Vexelberg, right?
Kalimnik.
Was
Yeah,
Vexelberg, or
Kalimnik.
was that Deripaska? Maybe it was Deripaska with
Was
Manafort.
it Deripaska? You sure? Well,
I'm
they
not
were
sure.
both
I'm not
involved.
sure.
So yeah,
They're both,
but we got
they're
you.
the
Yeah,
same
they're both.
thing.
They was exactly. Go ahead. Yeah.
They both lead the same way. But
Yes.
you've got these. It's the same story of 2016 that Trump keeps calling a hoax, hoax, hoax. I mean, obviously, it's not a hoax. These people were personalities inside that attempt to get Trump elected and successful attempt at getting him installed as the president of the United States in 2016. Now we're seeing the behind the scenes evidence of all of this. We're beginning to see all the moving and the shaking that was going on behind the scenes in order to get him there, and then also to extract favors out of him afterwards. So this is what he's terrified of: is being proven to be a blackmailed president who's been doing the bidding of his blackmailers all along, and worse, probably taking a lot of money from his blackmailers all along. And that's the real stuff that he's, I think, deathly afraid of.
I'm gonna be honest with you, Zev. I think it's a combination. Look, Donald Trump is by nature a very nasty human being. You could
Mhm.
tell he's a narcissist. He's not somebody that will walk by. He's the type of guy that will walk by the street, and if there's a blind man collecting money, instead of putting money in there, he'll steal the money that's in there. That's the type of guy Donald Trump is. That's the type of guy Donald Trump surrounds himself with, and that's the type of person that will only do these type of things. So and for guys like Epstein and others to call him the dirtiest, the nastiest, and it just shows you that he will go to any extent possible to be. So I think it's a combination of all of these things that Donald Trump. He doesn't want the world, his inner circle, and people everywhere to realize who the real Donald Trump is. A person that will stop at nothing, that will do nothing, and that did, a lot of bad things in his 80 years, that he's
Mhm.
trying to cover up. Just think about how he's trying to change history right now with the insurrection by releasing and pardoning all the insurrectionists, and now going after the people the committees, the bipartisan committees that investigated. He's trying to change it, say that 2020 was stolen. He's trying to right now, change the history, between his own arrest and that he was persecuted and stuff like that. He's trying to change the story between the Russia war, what's happening in the Middle East. This is what down,
This is
he's
what he's
coming and
doing.
trying. This is
Absolutely.
exactly. So he's trying to now change the story. The Epstein is the biggest story that he needs to change, because the Epstein story is actually what it tells who that Donald Trump really was and really is till this day. And he's trying to, hide it as far as he can. And that's why we can't and we won't let him do that. And that's one of the things, I'm really proud to be partnered up with Yuzev and Dean and others, a part of our coalition that we're building here. And we're working a lot of folks behind the scenes. First of all, make sure you follow Zev, make sure you follow Dean, make sure you follow me, cross pollinate. We Because we're building a major community that we're making moves. We're behind the scenes. We're trying to get much bigger exposure to get our message far and wide. We're going to go to the road. We have certain fundraisers that we're doing to, so make sure if you can support whatever you can, because the one thing we don't have is time, because all of this thing that God gave us, these are, truly, truly big presents to be able to keep dismantling MAGA to such a point, because they're right now in the crisis mode. The White House is in crisis mode, going into, you know, plan B to try to go after the senators to try to stop it. Meanwhile, you're having MAGA go all over the place. And the whole thing is, it's all different issues, from the gropers to the national white nationalists to the Christian national to the Charlie Kirk to what's happening right now with the Epstein. It's all in this array. He knows it. He sees it. So that's why we have to make sure to keep the pressure on and keep the support and supporting independent journalists like Zev. Make sure that we go out there, because what we're telling you here, I promise you, you're not going to see it on no television. You might see it 2 3 days from now once they report on what we're telling you. But that's why it's important to, we need your support.
That's absolutely right. Lev and I both sat here about a couple of months ago saying this Epstein stuff is radioactive for the White House, and you were so right about the approach you took back then and the things you were suggesting needed to happen. And this is why Lev needs everyone's support in his movement here, because he is doing what he can to make sure that strategically we undo MAGA the way they undid the Democrats before that. He had an inside view of what it was like to do inside MAGA, and now he's taking the same ideas and using it against MAGA, which is so powerful and important in this fight. And I'm so glad you raised this Vitaly Churkin conversation, because it really brings everything full circle. Because we've shown to you tonight that there are compromising photos. These are now proven to exist. We've shown you there's an espionage operation trying to compromise people like Clinton, like Donald Trump. And then we have Epstein himself going to Churkin, or talking about going to Churkin, and he's saying Churkin was great. He understood Trump after our conversations. It is not complex. He must be seen to get something. It's that simple in describing how to get at 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 Trump. But then he also says to the former prime minister of Norway, I think you might suggest to Putin that Lavrov can get insight on talking to me, in basically saying that Lavrov can get insight into Trump by talking to Epstein. So they were providing intelligence to Lavrov, to Putin, to anyone who is listening inside the Kremlin leadership about how to get Trump to do their bidding. And in fact, he seems to have done it, because when you look at his track record, he's very pro Putin. He's very pro Kremlin. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah, and listen, Churkin, the fact that he was talking to Churkin, and the way he's explaining it, that Churkin understood who Trump is. For all of you that don't know, please, when you get a chance, go Google and see who Victor Churkin was, and that this was a direct link to Vladimir Putin. So when Epstein says that he was dealing with him, this is what I was exactly what me and Zev keep telling you about, how the Kremlin, how Putin, how they had control over people like Trump by getting, Epstein is just one of them. There's plenty of others in Trump world that we don't know about, plants and everything, that have been working and still work with Russian assets, because there's a lot of money involved, folks. Because that's one of the ways, in the 90s when the when Soviet Union fell, I was there. I'll never forget. This was part of the plan, was to make these oligarchs. They made these oligarchs. This was part of the plan. It's like making robots. They made these oligarchs. They funded them with all this money, and they sent them out there to infiltrate all over the world, to be able to, because, well, to buy time to make Russia great again, to get the funds in. So this was part of it coming to the United States. Trump was just one of many people that they did this to. They just hit the jackpot that Trump became the president of the United States. They never could have believed it, that they would have their asset that they were working on, because he was just rich, powerful, and somebody that was, fit the criteria for them to look into.
And they made him rich and powerful by laundering a lot
Oh
of
yeah.
money through him. I
Oh,
mean,
help them.
they
Absolutely.
laundered millions and millions of dollars through him. Lev Parnas, thank you so much for being here today. I know you've got to jump off because you've got to do another thing with
Yeah.
your paid subscribers. Everyone should go and check out that conversation you're going to have with your paid subscribers. Tell people what you're going to be discussing.
Yeah, no, we're going to be breaking some news, also talking about the end of the week, connecting the dots to everything. But like everything else, we're going to do it to all the subscribers. So please just make sure to subscribe. It's free. Paid subscriber, do a little special by being able to ask your questions, come up and actually be part of the conversation. But the most important thing is everybody could join, because the information is the most important thing that we need to dissemble. And that's why we need everybody to go. The work that Zev is doing. Remember, Zev was doing this for since 2019, when nobody was even talking about this. Zev has been reporting on it, and now this is so crucial. So, the way he connects the dots is extremely important, because there's a lot of out there, and we need to connect the dots for you, so you guys could keep your eye on the ball and not get distracted with what's about to come. Because of what's about to come, I could promise you, they're going to throw everything at the wall, from the Clintons to Black, you name the names,
Yeah.
they're going to be going. Investigations, nasty, dirty things are going to start coming up, just to be able to do one thing, and that's take your eye off the ball. Because the one's name that comes up there over 1,000 times, the one person they've scrubbed, the one person that has the authority to release all these files, the one person that ran on this, is not doing it, and that's Donald Trump,
Yeah, I'm
because
so
he
glad
has
you
the
mentioned
most to
that.
hide.
Because he
Yeah.
did run on this. This was a promise he made, and one of the biggest promises he made, and he's not fulfilling it. Lev knows exactly what's going inside the White House. He knows exactly. He's got good sources. This man has got good sources inside there. So everyone who joins him on the chat will be able to get a good sense of exactly what's going on inside the White House. I hear through some people that he's wandering around the White House at nights whispering Epstein, 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 like like Lady Macbeth, basically. I don't know what's going on with this guy, but he's panicking. Obviously, the reaction this morning. This is not a. He's not calm. He's not collected. This is him in panic mode, and you're going to tell your followers and anyone who's watching right now who wants to flip over there exactly what he's up to. And just follow up on your note there about the greatest heist. This weekend, I'm actually just finishing chapter 2 of the J.P. Morgan Jeffrey Epstein story. So thank you, Donald Trump. Thank you for mentioning J.P. Morgan. Thank you for mentioning Jamie Dimon. You're promoting my part 2. Maybe he'll subscribe. Maybe you all will subscribe. You can read about exactly what these guys did in order to crash the 2008 economy and to profit wildly off it, while everybody else lost their homes, lost millions of dollars. So that's all coming up tomorrow or the next day at Narrative. Lev, thanks so much. Have a great weekend. I really appreciate you jumping in here.
Zev, you too, my brother. And by the way, everybody asking, we'll be going live within about 15 minutes. We're just running a little late, but about 15, 20 minutes, I'll send a notice out. Just watch out, and I'll be going live. Zev, have a great weekend, my brother. I'll see you next week.
Cheers. Have a good one. That's the great Lev Parnas joining us on Five Stack. Where is Dean Blundell? You're all asking where Dean Blundell is. I have no idea where Dean is. I mean, I do have an idea of where he is, but he's also traveling right now. So I've not spoken to him since yesterday, but he's okay. If everyone's wondering, he's okay. He's well. He's just traveling. I'm not sure where in the world he is, but as soon as we find him, we will have a conversation with him. We'll catch you up on the Five Stack, as we've been doing Monday to Friday here on Substack. So we'll be back on Monday with a guaranteed show on Monday. And hope you have a great weekend. I really want to thank all of you for your support this week. The appreciation for all the Epstein work is not unnoticed. You guys have been so so complimentary and so nice. And I want to thank you for your support. It's so important for me to get that support, but not just because it's me getting support. This story needs to get out more than anything right now. The stuff that Donald Trump is about to cover up, the stuff that the Congress is about to vote to release, is some of the stuff that I'm covering in The Greatest Heist. It's some of the stuff that I've been reporting for the last 6 years. It's important that every American understand that this is an operation that's been done against America, no matter whether you're a Republican or Democrat or whatever. This is an operation that's been done to compromise people at the highest leaders, at the highest levels, to really instill corruption in the highest levels of America and to corrupt our system, not so just the politicians could get rich, but so that you could get poorer, so that we will be in these financial troubles that we're having right now, and that our democracy will be unstable. Because the number one thing Vladimir Putin wants to prove is that capitalism isn't good, isn't working, that the Russian system is better, the democracy, the way we have it, is malfunctioning. And it's malfunctioning because of them, of the very efforts they've taken with Donald Trump and others to destabilize it and steal so much money out of the economy. Millions and millions and millions have been stolen out of the American economy, even trillions, some people say. We'll show you exactly how all of that happens in The Greatest Heist. Please check out part 2, or chapter 2 of part 2, which comes out tomorrow. And again, thanks for being here today. Thanks for a good week, and have a great weekend, everybody. You all deserve it. Bye-bye, everyone.